And we are live again. We didn't do much this last time, so we just figured we'd do another video. But today we are going to be responding to genetically modified skeptic. So we're gonna go through that video and we're going to see what he has to say about some stuff. Yeah, and I know I'm gonna play the video. Oh wait, I gotta share my sound. Here we go. Almost forgot. You guys would have just been looking at some random guy talking.
Yeah.
Longtime viewers of this channel have endured many responses to Christian apologist Frank Turek. The reason I've responded to him more than any other apologist is that he so precisely represents the kind of Christianity
Put your thing on
I was
mute.
raised.
Huh?
There's a double sound. I think it might be because I think you need to put your mic on mute.
Oh yeah. Hold on.
His hyper-literal fundamentalist interpretation of the Bible.
But even if macroevolution were true, and I don't think it is, but even if it were true, that wouldn't mean Christianity was false. It would give us problems for biblical inerrancy in the Old Testament, but it wouldn't mean Christianity was false.
Constant misrepresentation of science.
They're presupposing that God doesn't exist. And they have to operate that way when they go into the laboratory. They think they have to have this, what's called methodological naturalism, that they have their method when they do science presupposes that there's no intelligence out there. Okay. And so when they're looking for a cause.
Oh, I did not mean to switch back, but no. So okay, this is a common thing for Christians and theists. And Wyatt, what's up, buddy? I have not spoken to you in like I can't even tell you how long because I don't want to lie. That's a sin. But it is a common thing for Christians to not accept evolution and also be scientifically inept in one way or another. Me and Michael, we were just talking about how there's a trade-off a lot of times when it comes to being religious and not being religious. But all of that aside, just tackling what Frank just said. Number one, Frank talked about how he doesn't accept macroevolution. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be real. That is not a distinction in science. When scientists talk about evolution, there is no distinction between micro and macro evolution. It is all evolution. There is not this thing of microevolution exists, but macroevolution doesn't exist. Because I'm going to be honest, most Christians' understanding of evolution is not true. Most Christians' understanding of evolution is a very warped interpretation of evolution that really comes from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I'm going to put links into the historical background of where young earth creationism came from. What is the origins of young earth creationism? What is the origins of evolution denial? Most Christians only hold to the view of evolution and creation that they hold to because they were taught this. They were taught this from the time they were little kids. Somebody in Sunday school told them evolution was a lie, the devil, not even knowing that Charles Darwin, on his way to the Galapagos Island, he was a Christian. Hundreds of years before Charles Darwin even came onto the scene, people who believed in God were asking questions about evolution. At that time, they called it development. But all of that to say, and I'm not trying to let Frank slip away from what he said. There is no distinction between micro and macro evolution. It's the same thing, basically. As far as scientists assuming that there is no intelligence out there, that's a shock to me. I didn't know scientists went into the lab and tried to figure out whether or not there was an intelligence out there and messing around with the numbers and stuff behind the universe. That's not what scientists do. So what scientists do when they do science is they look for natural explanations to explain natural phenomena in the world. And the minute you invoke something supernatural into that explanation, you are no longer doing science. I am a Christian. I do believe in God. However, we have to be real. We have to be honest. Scientists are not in the lab trying to disprove God. It's not even a second thought when you do science. Just like when you look out into the world and when you do archaeology or when you do history or when you do astronomy, you're not thinking about Jesus when you're looking at astronomy and trying to figure out, I wonder where, I don't know. I wonder how stellar nuclei synthesis occurs. Nothing about God occurs in that. So with that being the case, I like Frank Turk with some of his apologetic answers, but when it comes to science, I'm gonna go to Frank Turk to talk about science. Praise God, Frank Turk accepts Big Bang cosmology, but he still denies the theory of evolution. He still promotes the pseudoscience that is an intelligence design. Intelligent design also has its roots in Seventh-day Adventism. If you don't know, let me be the first person to tell you. And a lot of people who are Christians hold these views because they assume that these views therefore mean biblical inerrancy, or they think that they're honoring the biblical integrity of the text. But I am here to tell you that that is absolutely false. That is absolute nonsense. And we're going to have some videos going into that. But long story short, when it comes to a lot of things that have to do with science, I'm ashamed of Christians in that regard. This thing where we deny evolution, this thing where we deny the age of the earth, even though Frank Turk doesn't deny that, this thing where we latch on to intelligent design because we think that there's some super secret agenda in the scientific arena where people are trying to disprove Jesus. That is dumb. And that's not how it works. And I know Frank Turk doesn't know how that works because he thinks when scientists go into the lab, they're trying to exclude supernatural explanations. That's not even a thing when you go into the science lab. That's not even a possibility because science deals with the exploration and explanations of how natural phenomena in the natural world work. That's it. I don't know if you had anything you want to say, Mike.
No, I think you got it handled, bro. You're good.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna keep playing the video. That just irked me. Because Christians get a bad rap because of stuff like this all the time. I don't get how Frank Turk could be such a big advocate for Big Bang cosmology. He understands the science behind that, but evolution is just a lie from the pits of hell. We gotta do better. We gotta do better. It's like Christians just do not understand evolution. We gotta do better. All right, I'm gonna play the video some more.
They're always going to assume it's a natural cause, even if the evidence points to an intelligent being. So it's more of a philosophical presupposition than it is based on interpreting the evidence properly.
And clear lack of empathy for non-Christians.
She's not a Buddhist now because she thinks it's true. She's a Buddhist now because she wants to say she's spiritual and not have any more.
I can't.
Now I see how harmful all of that can be, though, so I try to
Have any moral accountability. She's a Buddhist.
Christians.
She's not a Buddhist now because she thinks it's true. She's a Buddhist now because she wants to say she's spiritual and not have any moral accountability.
Transports me back to a time when I also acted as if I knew the minds of non-believers and the answers to life's biggest questions better than anyone else. Now I see how harmful all of that can be, though, so I try to speak out on it whenever I think I have something useful to say. Turek just released a short video titled, "Does the Bible Say Atheists Don't Exist?" His answer to this question was interesting, so let's give it a watch.
The point about that it was kind of a self-evident for me until I reached Romans 1:20. At that moment, God said that I didn't exist because atheists don't exist because everybody knows about God. If you read it, it said, I didn't have any excuse. He's righteous and he's real. He is the Trinitarian God of the Bible. At that moment, I didn't have that. I am the one that had to demonstrate that he doesn't exist. How do you approach that?
The person asking the question here is referring to the New Testament book of Romans, chapter 1, verses 18 through 20. The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness, since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so people are without excuse. Here's Turek's answer to the question.
I think that there are some people out there who genuinely don't believe God exists because they've suppressed the truth so long that God has given up to their own desires, and they're at the end of Romans 1 rather than the beginning. So I don't want to call people who are atheists disingenuous. They may be totally honest, but they've lost the capacity to recognize God exists because God knows they're never coming back and he has given them up.
So he describes atheists as existing in two categories. Category 1, those at the beginning of Romans 1, people suppressing the truth in their wickedness, or in other words, those who secretly believe in God but won't admit it because they want to sin. Category 2, those at the end of Romans 1, people who have suppressed the truth in their wickedness so long that God has given them up, allowing them to truly not believe. To really understand what Turek means by that second category, let's read the last few verses of Romans 1 in
So I don't know what he's going to say. I didn't really plan on having Bible study with an atheist. I don't mind it though, but I will say, cultural context is key, and I'm almost very much certain that if I were to pull out my Logos Bible software commentaries, they would paint a different story than what Frank Turek just painted.
I think if we pulled out those, those commentaries on like basically the ancient cultural relevancy commentaries of that era, I don't think anybody would be correct about this in this video. That's usually when you don't refer to the doctors who go to school for 8 to 10 years for these things. Typically they just get everything wrong. And everybody, it's like when you're talking about Paul, usually you have to know about not only Jewish things but Greek things as well. So if nobody is doing that right now, I can almost guarantee nobody's going to get this right. Nobody's answer is going to be correct.
Oh, I'm actually doing that right now. I'm actually going to my commentary right now. Let me share my screen for my commentary. So here we go. So I'm going to type in, let me get my Bible. We're going to go to Romans 1:20. Not mean to do that. So here's Romans 1:20. Let's start from 19. So, and we're going to go to 21. I just highlighted it, so that's right there. And we're going to do a commentary. When you do biblical studies, when you are looking at your Bible, if you do not have a cultural commentary to go next to the text, you are almost always going to get things wrong. Almost always.
It has to be with doctors. It can't just be any old person who, oh, I've read the Bible for 20 years, whether it's an atheist or not. It doesn't matter. It has to be a doctor. It could be an unbelieving doctor, and it's that simple. Really, it's really that simple. If it's not a doctor in the field of Semitics, it's just going to be almost definitively wrong. Straight up. That's the way it is. It's the only way you can do it. Otherwise, if you're just reading it by yourself and you have nobody to reference, it's just going to be bad. You're going to pull out all the wrong conclusions, and you're not going to understand what it is you're reading. And if you talk to other people about it, it will be incorrect information being spread. And it's that simple, because this stuff is really complicated.
That's true. So this is the NIV Cultural Background Study Bible. It's by Craig Keener and Dr. John Walton. I think they're both doctors, so Dr. Craig Keener and Dr. John Walton. And this commentary, it gives you really good background information on your Bible. So I'm going to start from the atheist guy just read it, but for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them. Who is the them? Who is Paul talking about? Is Paul talking about you and me today? That is a question we need to ask. Because God has shown it to them. To who? Who has God shown what to? For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, he has been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that they have made, or in the things that have been made. So they are without excuse. Who are the they? Who is they? Who is them? For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. So if you go to the Cultural Study Bible Commentary, it says, so let's start from 17. The righteousness of God. No, actually, this starts at 18. So let's start at 18. Let me just scroll down a little bit. There we go. We're going to start from 18. In these verses, Paul, following an argument similar to the popular wisdom of Solomon, sets up any Jewish critics to recognize their own need for forgiveness. Who is the they here? Now, who is the they? Is the they atheists? Are these atheists he's talking to right here? Jewish people view idolatry and sexual sin, especially in its homosexual form, as reprehensible and almost uniquely characteristics of Gentiles. The vice list in verse 28 to 32 is more general. However, in chapter 2, most clearly 217 to 227, Paul denounces especially Jewish sin. Both Jewish people and many Gentile philosophers affirm that God revealed himself in creation. Stoics and many other thinkers saw traces of divine design in all of nature, and especially in the human mind. So who is the they? Who is the they here? From my commentary, and let me reread this again. In these verses, Paul following an argument. I did not mean to do that. I hate this thing. Following an argument similar to the popular wisdom of Solomon, sets up any Jewish critics to recognize their own need for forgiveness. It seems like what they're saying in the commentary is Paul is actually speaking to a Jewish audience about their need for forgiveness. So it could be that in Romans 1:18, Paul may not even be talking about Gentiles and or atheists. So that's a new one. Now, if you go down to 21, nor gave thanks. In a culture obsessed with honor, failure to honor or give thanks to benefactors was deemed reprehensible. 123, made to look like a mortal human being and birds and animals and reptiles. Greeks and Romans depicted their major deities in human form and ridiculed Egyptians for portraying many deities as animals or part animals. For Jewish people, idolatry, worship of false images of deity, was one of the worst sins, and one specifically characteristic in this period of Gentiles. Preparing for his latter argument, however, Paul tellingly deploys here language that Scripture had applied to the idolatry of God's own people. So it seems like Romans 1 is like a denouncement of people in the Jewish faith. And I don't know if I'm still on the stream or not.
Yeah, it says we're live.
Okay. So if I read that correctly, if I interpret that correctly, Paul may not even be speaking against Gentiles, let alone atheists. There were not atheists in Rome at that time. That was against the law to be an atheist. You had to worship Roman gods and deities. So when people like Frank Turek use Romans 1, I know for a fact that atheism didn't even exist. That wasn't a thing.
Well, atheism was a crime, actually, and Christians would have been considered atheists because they didn't believe in enough gods. They had monotheism in a at that time Trinitarian aspect, and the Romans had multiple gods, and if you didn't worship enough gods, one being not enough, most definitely, it would have been considered heresy, atheistic heresy.
So yeah, I don't think Paul is speaking to atheists. Even if you want to say Paul is speaking to Gentiles believed in gods. So I don't think this has anything to do with people not believing in God or a deity at all in any way. I don't think that's what Paul is getting at. If I read that commentary correctly, Paul very well could be ripping a new one to his Jewish audience. So that actually is very new to me, but it makes sense because atheism wouldn't have been a thing. It wouldn't have been a popular thing, at least not like it is today. So here's another classic example of Christian apologetic talking points going wrong. So I'm going to play the video some more. My battery is almost dead, so I'm going to try and finish up the video.
Interpreting the text as Turek does, as applying to all non-Christians even outside of the author's own time. Furthermore, just as they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to a depraved mind, so that they do what ought not be done. They have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. They have no understanding, no fidelity, no love, no mercy. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. Yikes. Now, I'm not so sure that the author of this text intended it to be interpreted as Turek does, but we'll come back to that later. It's interesting to me that he doesn't want to call atheists disingenuous, but his explanation of how genuine atheism arises relies on the idea that people purposely suppress what they know to be true because of their own moral failings. I suppose someone could do this so long that they eventually truly stop believing, but is dishonesty not required to start along that path? You're not really refraining from calling atheists dishonest if you're still asserting that all states of atheism necessarily begin with dishonesty. Also, saying that genuine atheists are accurately described by the end of Romans 1 is much more insulting than saying that atheists are dishonest.
You think I'm a liar just because I'm an atheist? No, I'm not calling you a liar. I'm calling you wicked, evil, greedy, depraved, envious, murderous, deceitful, malicious, a slanderer, a gossip, a God-hater, insolent, arrogant, boastful, an inventor of ways of doing evil, disobedient to your parents, lacking understanding, and incapable of fidelity, love, and mercy. That's all I'm saying.
Frank Turek has long painted all those who disagree with Christianity as psychologically broken or morally bankrupt. It's a defining feature of his brand at this point.
I win easier, faster, and more often than 99% of other entrepreneurs because of this.
He even claims that scientists propose hypotheses like the multiverse for no other reason than their own refusal to believe in God, as if scientists are more interested in making statements about Christianity than doing science.
Yeah, it's the multi-universe theory for those.
So being as I only got 17% left of my battery, and I think this is a pretty good place to close anyway, because we didn't really come to talk about the science today. But being as like that guy read those verses again, it seems like, and I'm thinking, it seems like Paul is making an argument that although you knew God, you didn't worship God as God because you're a liar, you're a thief, you're a whatever. It's kind of like Paul is giving like a first century good person test to his Jewish audience. You guys are not, and I think if we would have went back and we would have looked at Romans 1:17 and below or before, I think what he's doing is I think these are Pauline arguments against Jewish people who think they're righteous because they keep the law. So I think that might be more accurately what's actually going on in these writings, opposed to Paul is trying to let people know that this 1% of people, if that, in the Greco-Roman world who could, like, don't believe in God. Like, I don't think Paul is trying to educate the Roman world that these 1% of people we don't really care about actually do believe in God. I mean, given that at that day and time, ironically, Frank, they would have considered Paul to be an atheist because he only worshiped one God. So an atheist telling other atheists they don't exist. Interesting.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty absurd. He's not really. You said it before. It's just apologetics gone wrong, and this just kind of strayed into like the stratosphere of just complete absurdity. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't know what else to say about it. It's just bad. It's really bad apologetics. I don't like it personally. I'm not a fan of just fundamental Christian apologetics. They don't vibe with me whatsoever. And that's all I'll really say about it because I think we've covered it enough.
Yeah, I think we have. On that note, thanks for the people who tuned in. I did put somebody in timeout because he was just tripping balls and I don't know what he was talking about. But all right, guys, until the next video, this has been fun. Cheers.